Well, hello, this is Dell, and welcome to another episode of what you need to know about home studios for social media. Now, in the previous episode, which was the introduction, of course, we started with something very big. We're going to build a tree. Big at the bottom, very broad, and as we go up the tree, we're going to get thinner and thinner on the branches till we get all the way down to the twigs. And we can then branch out in thousands of little places. But since the first episode was the introduction, and the next episode is going to be a walkthrough of Studio K and Studio O, you'll start to see a little bit about the hardware, and I'll do a little light discussion on top of that. But before we get there, we need to kind of start having some kind of our own little terms and dialogue to make sense out of this stuff. And that's where we're going today. The very first and most simple type of format that you're going to have is going to be this. I know this seems kind of fundamental, but it's going to be a single set or setting, a single person, the one in front of the camera, single mic, and a single camera. Now, a lot of shows are produced like that, and you may not really even stop to think about that. But this is Studio K, the kitchen, and it's a multi-purpose room. It serves for my shows, but it also serves as the kitchen, so I can't just leave everything out all the time. I could, and I kind of always do, but most people's houses, you're going to have somebody say, get that stuff out. So you got to look at what it's going to take in your routine of producing content to bring in a bunch of equipment to set it up and all that kind of jazz, get the audio levels and the video levels and the lighting and all that set up. Do that over and over and over again multiple times, and it becomes very difficult to do if you have a very complex setup. So single set, single person, single camera is often used for that because it is very simplistic, but it works really well. And you can actually have some very simple equipment, such as a cell phone holder, if it does HD, your cell phone holder on one of those little ring lights on a little portable stand, whether it be a table stand or a floor stand, because both of those things are battery operated, the camera and the light, and generally good audio would require you to have, a Bluetooth microphone or something like that, and because it's just you don't necessarily need any kind of headphones or earphones to get the feedback from the studio because there's nobody talking to you, it's just you. Single setting, single person, single camera, and of course, single microphone or something to go with that. Now from there, we can think of what kind of shows that we know on YouTube that are famous, or maybe on Rumble that are very famous like that. Again, I'll refer back to the lady who does Liberty Doll. She has a setup. She does it. She has her stick with her flower, the big earrings, or maybe sometimes it's a bow or something like that. The red lipstick. She's got her character, and she's branding herself in that environment with her background. Now, in the multi-purpose room like the kitchen, I'm kind of limited to what's behind me. A lot of people will use an office or their business office or the bedroom. That works good too. But if you have a separate dedicated room that is always going to be set up for you, you can take advantage of a few other things like the backdrop. This backdrop is the real house. But in the office where I do the Studio, where I do the main production, that setup had been in place for a long time. I have scars along the back where the chair would rub, and I could fix that, but it looks ugly, so I kind of hid it behind a drapery in case it was a flower, Tennessee flag rather, and it sits back there and it does that. But you can, if you have a nice clean wall and a dedicated room, when you leave your equipment out, it makes it so much easier to produce content on a more frequent basis, simply because you don't have to drag it all out, you don't have to set anything up. And in the case of the studio software, which I use to do live streaming and what all, you don't want to break a lot of that down because it can change your inputs and when and where they show up in Windows, and that can cause you to have dead audio and messed up scenes and everything else. So it's good to have a fixed studio if you can. It also works really well because you could do a blue screen or green screen in behind you. Now they do make portable green screens and blue screens that you put behind you, and then you can reflect a different background. Or again, if it's a dedicated space, you can actually build a legitimate backdrop for your show. So you start out with that. Is your studio or your place you're going to shoot, is it going to be a multi-purpose room? Look at Funny Maine, Jermaine Johnson, if I get his name right. Funny Maine, he's a comedian who his stick is that he does what Bama fans, how Bama fans watched SEC football week, whatever. And it's shot clearly from his coffee table at his house, and he'll put a little Easter egg in back, his little blackboard that he'll write something on, put a little message on or whatever, and he doesn't call attention to it, but that little bit of variation each time helps keep it from being boring, although it keeps it recognizable in his branding or his persona, his, I hate to use the word shtick again, but his persona as a comedian. Being a Bama fan, he'll change shirt from time to time and even switch it in between scene to scene, but it's still like he's watching it from the couch. But that's a multi-purpose room, just like this kitchen is. You have other people, like I talk about Liberty Doll, or Task and Purpose, or Guns and Gadget. Many of these shows, they have a fixed setting, and that helps them produce good content. Now, if we go from one person to multiple people, think about something like the Conservative Twins. They're also comedians, and their show, they do a little kind of commentary on current events. Now, it's a slight variation because it's still single set, multiple people, multiple mics, but one camera. That keeps it very, very easy because you can get one setup and get everything balanced and adjusted so that you don't end up having to shoot or reshoot because something didn't, one audio level wasn't good. You can get it set up and do that, and they do a good job. Now, in the multiple people, I want to get to this. When you have two people, a lot of shows will be set up with still one person or the host. The host and the color is one way to do it. Host and the color, like think of who is it? Changed My Mind. His show. What I'm trying to think. Louder with Crowder. Is Crowder? Yes, Crowder. His show. He is basically like a radio show. It's all on him, except occasionally he'll kibitz, and the producer or his other person there that's working with him will respond. But it's pretty well much the conversation is all driven and focused out of one person. Now, if we look at the Conservative Twins, and even like Diamonds and Silk, you'll find a primary speaker, not because the other person's not talented, surely, but one person will do the intro and the extro, so they're kind of like the host, and then the other one can kibitz in their color with a or a comment here and there. And because that is a sort of a kibitzing in that format, it doesn't have to be synchronized. It's pretty hard for two people that are sitting side by side to be perfectly balanced at all time and not step on each one of them when one of them has something to say. So it sort of helps in the host, kind of co-host or host and color type of fashion. Also, not everybody wants to do all the talking. Some people are more tongue-tied. You'll notice I'm very tongue-tied all the time. I trip over my words. Hey, it's just me. It's part of my charm. But you'll find that that's easier to do. Now, if you have a monitor where you guys can look at each other, or you're facing across tables, that's one way to have kind of that conversation to go. And if you have a producer or somebody that can actually put a finger up like, no, go to him, or whatever, give you the signals off a camera, that helps. But again, it's multiple people. Another multiple people condition or show format would be like a cooking show. Some cooking shows are just one person. You got that, right? One person, they come in, they do it. They may, and I'll get into the multiple cameras just a second, but you may have like the father-son duos or the mother-daughters or whatever, where you have one is the personality to do the intro and extro, and then maybe mom or the specialist, the cook, the chef does the work, and so they're going back and forth. In that case, that person who is doing the intro extro can also do the camera shot on top of the individual preparation. Remember, you can also, if you're doing post production, a lot of cooking shows will do this, especially if they're single person shows. Like if I do one of them, I might come up and actually present to you, the viewer, the last segment I shot, which was the finished product. Like, I'm going to show you today how to make this wonderful apple pie, and we've got the results right there. Now that was actually in reality, in time, maybe shot last, and then I shot another one with me in front of the camera where we're going to talk about the ingredients, and this is this or there, you know, that kind of stuff. And you can then reposition, still using a single camera in a different place. It'll appear as two cameras, but it may actually not be. Now you look at that previous example of Louder with Crowder, one setting, but two people and two cameras, they have to switch back and forth. And for that, a lot of times the engineer is needed to be able to do that kind of video. You can do it a different way, which is simply run two cameras constantly facing each other at all time and then sequence the cuts in. But that's a little different format. Now, all of these things break out to be different things that are specific to the product they're going to produce. So you wouldn't think about just going out and buying a bunch of gear until you figured out how you want to use it. Now, another show that I watch is a guy named, I guess it's Johnny's Reloading Bench. Now, Johnny has, like, I'm guessing, a fixed kind of setup. His studio case, actually his studio or his reloading room, and I got one of those up there as well, where he starts out his show, and you never really see Johnny's face, but you see Johnny's hands and the bullets or whatever he's going to do, and his subject matter is getting product placement in there. He's doing a good job, and he's talking. But because it's always from the same place and the same angle, it's pretty easy probably for Johnny to duplicate that time and time again. So that is a single camera, single man, single scene type of situation. But now he'll also go out on the range, which is a second set, and then put the camera on the rifle as he sends down, and he'll use a second camera at that point to either video the target that he's hitting at, or maybe even a third if he wants to show the chronograph results. So there we end up with two settings or multiple sets and multiple cameras, one person. So you got all kind of different variation, and it's going to depend on what kind of equipment you have. Again, a lot of people who shoot targets will take a cheaper GoPro or something, and they'll run it down there and they'll get it turned on, and they'll come back up and they'll do their introduction, and then they'll splice those two feeds in together. That's one way to do it. On a live show like I've got the studio set up over here, I can actually run the four cameras, switch in between the two of them, and run the show as we go and actually lay it down in order. Actually in order where I don't have to post-process. But that is a different setup for a different purpose, and it gets awfully demanding of you to operate that in your head as you do it. Now, I think we've talked enough just to kind of lay down some of the basic different ways that we can do things, because even when we get into the microphones and the cameras and the stuff like that, we're going to get into more than just one that's nice and portable, whether it's weatherproof or whether it's fixed in its position, because there's a lot of different stuff that you can do that you don't need to waste money on something if it's not going to fit in with your particular, if it's not going to give you anything, why pay the extra money for it? So I will ask you, as always, I think I'm going to run on Rumble, because the Rumble videos are only going to be available through the Rumble player. So I think I'm going to set them up to actually be aired a little bit before the YouTube, which will be on, that you can get it from any of the regular YouTube standard type of format. I'll go into in a future episode how very important it is to you, and you're developing your channel, your brand, your shows, that you ask people, please click subscribe to the channel, because when it comes into the bidding of trying to find or to sell ad space, which can help us produce, we have to have viewers, we have to have views, we have to have then comments as well. All of those things create interest, and they're judged in their algorithms to say this one is a better place, Mr. Advertiser, to put your product or your advertisement in. Now, it's not that much money, And as soon as you start trying to produce and trying to keep up with this, you'll appreciate just how important that is, that people subscribe to your channel, they lay a comment down, even if it's I appreciate the show, or you missed this point, or you ask a question. And of course, watch it, because all of that's going to be important for your development as well. Thank you. Stay tuned for next episode.